Welcome to the beautiful city of London. As you can see, there is so much to explore. Enjoy.
Because this small island has survived Roman invasions, Viking raids, brutal civil wars, world-changing revolutions, and 2 devastating world wars. The real story is far messier than most people. Because this small island has survived Roman invasions, Viking raids, brutal civil wars, world-changing revolutions, and 2 devastating world wars. For more than 17 centuries, Britain has constantly reinvented itself. Every generation faced a new crisis, every crisis created a new Britain. To answer that, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Long before England even existed, thousands of Roman soldiers crossed the sea. Road by road, fort by fort, the conquest had begun. To answer that, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Long before England even existed, thousands of Roman soldiers crossed the sea. Road by road, fort by fort, the conquest had begun. Native Celtic tribes fought fiercely, but Roman discipline, engineering, and organization slowly pushed deeper into the island. Soon, Britain looked completely different. Stone roads connected distant towns, massive forts guarded the frontier. New cities appeared where forests once stood. One city would eventually become the center of everything. Londinium, the city we now call London. Markets grew, bathhouses opened, trade flourished. For nearly 4 centuries, Britain became one of Rome's distant provinces. But even the greatest empire couldn't last forever. Far away, Rome itself was beginning to fall apart. In 410 AD, the Roman legions marched home, not because Britain was safe, but because Rome needed every soldier it had left. Suddenly, Britain stood alone. No Roman army, no Roman protection, no Roman empire. And whenever power disappears, someone else always comes looking for it. Whenever power disappears, someone else always comes looking for it. Across the North Sea, new warriors were already preparing their ships. The Anglo-Saxons were coming. Wave after wave, they crossed into Britain. Some arrived as mercenaries, many stayed as conquerors. Old Roman towns faded away. New kingdoms began to rise across the countryside. Britain was changing once again. The island was no longer one united land. It became a patchwork of competing kingdoms, each fighting for survival. An even greater storm was approaching from the north, and unlike the Anglo-Saxons, these new invaders came searching for glory, gold, and conquest. October 14, 1066. 2 armies stood face to face near a place called Hastings. One battle would decide the future of England for the next 1,000 years. October 14, 1066. 2 armies stood face to face near a place called Hastings. One battle would decide the future of England for the next 1,000 years. King Harold's exhausted army had just defeated one invasion in the north. Now they had marched hundreds of kilometers to stop another. Their fate would be decided in a single day. William of Normandy knew he couldn't win with brute force alone. The English shield wall was simply too strong. He needed something smarter. Again and again, Norman cavalry charged uphill. Again and again, the English held their ground. For hours, neither side would give in. Then William made one of history's greatest battlefield gambles. His soldiers pretended to retreat. The English believed they were winning. Shield wall broke as English warriors rushed downhill to chase the fleeing Normans. A single mistake changed everything. The trap had worked perfectly. William's cavalry suddenly turned around. The Norman knights crashed into the scattered English soldiers. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had begun. By sunset, King Harold was dead. England had a new ruler. History would remember him as William the Conqueror. Every castle became a symbol of Norman power. Every tower reminded the people exactly who ruled the country now. England would never be the same again. And William ordered something no English king had ever attempted: a complete survey of every village, every farm, every piece of land. Nothing would escape the crown. The result became known as the Domesday Book, one of the most remarkable records of medieval Europe. It gave the king complete knowledge of his kingdom. Norman French became the language of the royal court. Old English continued among ordinary people. Together they slowly evolved into the English language we know today. England wasn't just conquered. Its government, culture, architecture, and society were completely transformed. A new nation was taking shape. Over the next 2 centuries, Norman rulers slowly became English kings. But they still controlled huge lands across France. That would soon create a massive problem. Owning territory on both sides of the English Channel made English kings incredibly powerful, but it also guaranteed endless conflict with France. War became almost unavoidable. Powerful nobles demanded more rights from the king. They were tired of unlimited royal authority. England was about to take a historic step. In 1215, King John reluctantly placed his seal on the Magna Carta. For the first time, even a king accepted that his power had limits. The idea would echo through history. The Magna Carta didn't create democracy overnight, but it planted a revolutionary idea. No ruler should stand above the law. England had survived conquest. It had reshaped its government, but an even longer and bloodier struggle was about to begin across the English Channel. The Norman Conquest had transformed England, but the kingdom was still far from stable. Its greatest challenges were only beginning. Norman kings ruled England, but they also controlled vast lands in France. That strange situation would pull both kingdoms into centuries of conflict. Power brought wealth. Wealth attracted ambition, and ambition almost always leads to war. By the early 1200s, King John had pushed his nobles too far. Heavy taxes, military failures, broken promises. Something had to give. In 1215, armed barons forced the king to sign a remarkable document. It became known as the Magna Carta, a simple agreement that would influence governments for centuries. The first time, an English king officially accepted that even he had limits. No one, not even the crown, was supposed to be above the law. It was a revolutionary idea. Of course, not every king enjoyed being told what they couldn't do. The struggle between monarchs and nobles continued for generations. Then another rivalry exploded. England and France began fighting over who truly deserved the French crown. The conflict became known as the 100 Years' War. Ironically, it lasted 116 years. England's greatest weapon wasn't a castle, it wasn't a sword, it was the English longbow. Fast, accurate, deadly. Battles like Crécy and Agincourt, heavily armored French knights charged forward with confidence. Many never reached the English lines. The longbow changed medieval warfare forever. For a while, England looked unstoppable. Victory followed victory. Its influence across France continued to grow. History has a habit of changing direction when nobody expects it. This time, the enemy wasn't another army. It arrived silently, village after village, town after town. The Black Death had reached England. But history has a habit of changing direction when nobody expects it. This time, the enemy wasn't another army. Within just a few years, millions across Europe were gone. Entire English villages disappeared. Fields were abandoned. Churches fell silent. The kingdom survived, but it emerged completely different. Nothing, not the economy, not society, not daily life, would ever be the same again. With far fewer workers available, ordinary laborers suddenly became far more valuable. The balance of power slowly began to shift away from the old feudal system. New opportunities appeared. Trade expanded. Towns grew larger. A different England was beginning to emerge from the tragedy. Unfortunately, the royal family quickly found a brand new way to create chaos. They started fighting each other for the throne. The Wars of the Roses divided England for decades. The House of York, the House of Lancaster, red against white, family against family. After years of bloodshed, one final victory ended the conflict. Henry Tudor claimed the crown, and with him, a completely new chapter of British history began. Henry Tudor became King Henry VII. After decades of civil war, England finally had stability again. A new royal dynasty had arrived. The Tudors. Henry VII rebuilt the kingdom's finances, strengthened royal authority, and prepared England for a new age. But it would be his son who changed Britain forever. His name was Henry VIII. Today, most people remember him for one thing: his 6 wives, but that was only part of the story. Henry VIII wanted a male heir. When the Pope refused to approve his divorce, Henry made a decision that shocked Europe. Instead of obeying the church, he broke away from it completely. England would create its own church. The Church of England was born. The king, not the Pope, became its supreme leader. Religion and politics had become one. Monasteries across England were dissolved. Their wealth flowed into the royal treasury. The balance of power changed overnight. When Henry VIII died, his children inherited a divided kingdom. Religious tensions continued to grow. England's future remained uncertain. Then Elizabeth I became queen. Smart, determined, and one of Britain's greatest rulers. Under Elizabeth, England became stronger than ever. Trade expanded. The navy grew. Explorers sailed farther across the world. But one powerful enemy wanted to stop England's rise: Spain, the richest empire on earth. In 1588, King Philip II launched the mighty Spanish Armada. More than 100 ships crossed the sea toward England. Europe watched and waited. The English fleet was much smaller, but it was faster, more maneuverable, and brilliantly commanded. Fireships, powerful cannon, and violent storms shattered the Armada. Spain's invasion failed. England had survived. That victory changed everything. England was no longer just another European kingdom. It was becoming a global naval power. English ships reached new continents. Merchants established trading routes across the oceans. A worldwide empire was beginning to take shape. Soon, companies like the East India Company carried British influence deep into Asia. Trade brought unimaginable wealth, but it also reshaped the world. By the 1700s, Britain had become one of the most powerful nations on Earth. Its greatest transformation, however, was still ahead.
The 1700s, Britain had become one of the most powerful nations on Earth. Its greatest transformation, however, was still ahead. A revolution unlike any before was about to begin, not with kings, not with armies, but with machines. The Industrial Revolution would change Britain, and the entire world, forever. Modern Britain looked nothing like the empire it had once ruled. The age of colonies was ending. A completely different future was beginning. After two devastating world wars, Britain faced enormous debts, damaged cities, and a shrinking empire. Rebuilding the country became the nation's greatest challenge. One by one, former colonies gained their independence. The British Empire slowly transformed into the Commonwealth of Nations.
Britain no longer ruled a quarter of the world, but it still remained one of the world's most influential countries through diplomacy, trade, education, and culture. Today, Britain is a constitutional monarchy. The king serves as the head of state, while Parliament governs the nation through democracy. Centuries of history shaped this unique system. And everywhere you look, Roman roads, Norman castles, medieval cathedrals, Victorian railways, modern skyscrapers, every era still lives beside the next. So how did one small island survive invasions, civil wars, revolutions, global conflicts, and the collapse of its own empire, yet remain one of the world's most recognizable nations? Because Britain never stayed the same. Every invasion changed it, every crisis rebuilt it, every generation left its mark, and after 1700 years of chaos, that constant ability to adapt became Britain's greatest strength. History didn't simply happen to Britain. Britain kept rewriting itself, and somehow, the story is still far from over.